Yeah. Okay, sweet. Okay, cool. Mochi Podcast 23. Welcome to the show, Amanda Jamieson of this side. Cool. Well, thanks, Amanda, for being willing to hop on. We didn't really prep, and I like that we didn't prep. But you had an idea of what you want to talk about, so I would love for you to share what you wanted this podcast to be about and where we're going to take it today.
Right? My first instinct was like, let's talk about love and death. I was thinking, what would I consider myself an expert on?
Wow. Okay. And it's love and death. What makes you an expert on love and death?
Well, I was thinking, I feel like a lot of people have used these podcasts to sort of share their story and career stuff and things like that. I feel like a lot of people in Mochi know my story a little bit, but I'm not sure if you do. I don't know if we've ever really sat down and had this conversation, so this is fun.
Okay.
Let's see. I grew up in Hawaii. I was born in Fiji. My mom is from a village in Fiji. My mom was born in a house with no electricity. My dad is from this pretty posh San Francisco family. He never really vibed with them. He moved to Hawaii instantly. He was probably 19 or 20 and just sort of abandoned society.
Was he surfer rebel, wanted to defect kind of vibes, or what was his energy?
Yeah. He was more of a hippie, I think, than a surfer per se. Okay. He was very into sort of connecting with people, very much into the ocean. He was a diver. We went to the beach every single day growing up. Big ocean guy. And yeah, so he lived in Hawaii, traveled, went to Fiji, met my mom. I was born in Fiji in 1992. And pretty much my parents didn't stay together for very long. They were divorced for the second time when I was 6.
Wow.
Yeah. Divorce, and from there,
get back together, divorce.
Yeah. Wild.
Love, I guess, of some sort.
Love, right? It does things to you.
It does. Yeah, wow. Okay, sorry. Continue.
No, it's fine. And then from there, I have one sister, and we lived with my dad. So it was my dad, me, and my sister. And so I was raised by a single father who, a single girl dad. So that already was its own very sort of unique brand of love.
Yeah.
I feel like I have a lot of really interesting perspectives on sort of being a woman and having that mean a lot, but also not at all. I sort of grew up not ever feeling really never thinking that there was anything I couldn't do because I was a woman. We were very much raised just as people. And so we lived with my dad, and we were homeschooled. We traveled. Yeah, I was homeschooled until high school. My dad was fully rogue.
Wait, what did his family think? And if too sensitive, that's okay. But your mom, did she have a say? There was no co-parenting? This was just your dad?
Just my dad. Okay. My mom was a lot younger. Okay. And
my mom was also a lot younger than my dad. And I was raised by a single parent, but it was actually my mom. So I had the single father versus single mother. I feel like I don't know as much about the single father experience, and so I definitely want to hear more about that.
Totally. It's a rare one. It's a really rare one, and especially to have girls.
Yeah.
I feel like especially with girls, almost always go with the mom.
Yeah.
So right off the bat, it was a very unique situation. My mom was a lot younger. A lot younger. My mom was 20 when she had my sister, my dad was 40.
Yeah.
So my mom was like sort of 20s violent.
Similar range. Yeah. Similar range for me.
Yeah. And so my mom was, she comes from a wildly complex family in her own right.
Yeah.
And I think was dealing with a lot of things and just didn't really have the capacity. And my dad was all about it. My dad had kids and it gave him just meaning in life. Completely 100% like was thrilled and made us just his whole world. Big lover, big sensitive guy, but also totally rogue. Like we didn't go to school. We didn't.
Do you have to like file with the government to be home? Like how does that? You just like can you like opt out of school? Like what happens?
I think it was easier back like in the 90s.
Okay.
But I don't think that anyone checked. I don't think that anyone really cared. We would go to public school for like little spurts, couple months at a time, just like strictly for fun. Like we would go to.
How did it affect your sense of like building community as a kid? Or was it kind of like you and your sister were like a duo and like that was it?
No, it was really hard because I'm an incredibly social person.
For those who don't know, Amanda is very social.
I'm an incredibly social person and have been since day one.
Okay.
And so I think that's why we did the little spurts of public school. Is I think even when I was really young, I was like, let's go hang out with the other kids. Like, let's go see what they're doing. My sister was like less into it. She was into staying home. She was a little bit more creative and had a lot of great art practices and really didn't mind that. But I was always just like, get me to the kids. Where's the party at? But we
love consistent character traits. Like that was something actually on the podcast with Eddie last week. He was talking about like how in high school like he was already like canvassing for like different concerts and he was like volunteering doing like all this music stuff as like a teenager. And I was like, oh, so like you were like consistent through. And he was like, yeah. And then actually similarly like Eric too, which was like 2 podcasts ago, he was also saying like talking about like his kind of like childhood to like adult consistencies. I think it's fascinating. I don't know, like I think when people talk about like people changing, like yeah, people change and grow, but I think there are things that stay the same. Such as like I think your core personality, unless something like really crazy happens and then maybe it shifts, but like I think for the most part, you're kind of
I totally agree. I think that people end up being born with souls. Totally up for debate. Some wooey stuff. And I think
soul, the word
right.
soul.
There's gonna be a lot of woo-woo stuff here, so I'm big on the woo-woo.
I love a woo-woo. I love a woo.
Right, woo. And I do think that people are born with a lot of soul, and I think as you grow up, it depends on how in touch you are with your inner child. I think that there's a lot of things that don't ever go away. It just ends up how much you are engaging with that.
Wait, can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, I think the older we get sort of like crusty with the barnacles of reality or society or what we sort of told ourselves we're supposed to be doing.
Right.
And it's about sort of staying in touch with your inner child, when you came into this world and anything was possible and everything was sort of fantastical. Kids are really imaginative and always playing make-believe. And they sort of live in a world where anything is possible. And that's the fundamental truth, right? I was listening to this podcast the other day talking about how at the basis of atoms is just pure energy. It's just pure potential energy. So at the basis of everything, it's all make-believe, right? You can do whatever you want. You can make whatever you want. And we just give ourselves sort of limitations in life to protect ourselves, survive, to thrive in society as we know it. But I think everyone also has like a core soul that might have nothing to do with where you're from or who your family is. There's people who don't relate to their families at all.
Yeah.
My nephew, my sister's son,
Mm-hmm.
he was born his own person. He is nothing like his parents, nothing like his family. Just right out the gate, like 3 years old, he would be looking at them like drinking, and he'd be like, "No, like shame them."
That's so funny. Okay, so I actually have two things that came to mind. That point, actually, though, have you heard the concept of like new versus old souls? I'm sure you have.
Mhm.
And like, do you think that like your nephew, for example, like, would you say he's more on the new or old soul track?
Old soul. He's old. He's super serious and like knows exactly what he wants and is not messing around.
Amazing.
He's not here to like explore the options.
Okay.
He came to be new.
Okay. And then my other question that kind of, ties back to, because I do want to get back to you sharing like your story, is with, looking at your friends that maybe had a more traditional upbringing in the sense of like, it could have been stayed at the same house in the same school forever, until they went to college, or it could be maybe they moved around a little bit and had like two parents or like whatever, however you want to define traditional, like I think it varies. But do you think my hypothesis is that because of your unique upbringing, it might actually be easier for you to connect with your inner child and like have a stronger sense of self, as opposed to, which might be contrary to what people talk about with like more kind of like firm up and like secure upbringings. But I actually think that like if you're the more traditional of like a constraint that you're brought up in, you mold, right? Like you mold a lot easier into like what is this, instead of having to kind of like figure out your shit because things are always changing. I don't know if you have thoughts on that.
Absolutely. I think it's a blessing and a curse, because I totally agree. I think that I had no choice but to get to know myself really well, because I didn't have a lot of parameters for comparison. Again, like we were totally rogue. There were no rules. So with that, it was sort of, figure out who you want to be and what you want to do and rock that, which is great. And I have a very strong sense of self and I'm pretty self-aware, but there has been a lot of time. I turned 30 this year. So there's been a lot of sort of like self-reflection on my 20s and sort of me as a young person, if you will. And I have seen myself in the past, like looking for parameters to sort of compare with, Sometimes I feel so rogue that I'm like, what is everybody else doing? Like, what am I supposed to be doing?
We've talked about this a bit. I feel like we have talked about this mainly on Instagram DMs, I think. We have talked about the check, like, am I too rogue? Or like, am I going crazy? Checking.
Totally.
Yeah.
Because there's, we totally live in a society where there's sorts of rules, especially in America, you graduate, you go to college, you get a good job, you get married, get a mortgage, have kids. Like it's a very sort of standardized thing almost. Whereas I didn't see any of that growing up from any sort of authority figures.
Yeah.
And so I think growing up, I sort of looked for that a lot outside of myself, like amongst my peers. I was always like trying to conform a little bit because I just didn't have anything else to compare it to. I sort of, and it goes further because I grew up with my dad and my sister. We're traveling, we're homeschooled. We spent a lot of time, we pretty much bounced around between Hawaii, Fiji, California, Cook Islands, New Zealand.
Wow.
That was sort of like the circuit. We definitely, as much as my dad loved to travel, he was like trying to just park us at a beach for the majority of time.
Funny.
Which was great. And like I love reading, so sort of homeschooling came really easy to me. And really, I'm a huge fan of homeschooling, massive fan, because I feel like it really empowered me to pursue things that I'm curious about and let the education sort of follow.
Yeah.
I've been talking to my friend who's considering homeschooling her kid about this. And I was like, your kid will learn math, If she likes plants, she'll go outside and she'll start counting flowers. Like you'll figure it out. You'll learn things if you follow what you're curious about.
Right.
So I loved homeschooling. It's made me sort of just
cool.
obsessed with learning and exploring and things like that. But when I was in middle school, I was like, okay, I really started to build a good group of friends. I had like a solid crew of like 8 to 10 girls. We spent all our time together. We had so much fun. Started like playing sports, and I was like, okay, this community thing is pretty cool. Consistently have people that you can laugh with and cry with, and I really started to realize how important that was. And I had a lot of respect for my dad, and it couldn't have been easy being a single father of 2 girls. I'm sure that it was hard for him to even find the community that he would associate with, even if that's what he was looking for. But so when I was in junior high, I sat my dad down and I was like, listen, I'm going to play sports. I'm going to go to prom. I'm going to school. I'm going to high school. I was like, let's do this.
Listen, Dad, here's the situation. Like,
it's true.
Yeah. Sorry.
Because we worked pretty, my dad always also treated us like equals. Like, I don't want to say he treated us like adults, because it didn't have any of the weightiness or pressure of that.
Yeah.
But our thoughts and goals and opinions were always totally valid and always part of the decision, except for that. And so that was the time I sort of sat him down and I was like, listen, I'm going to prom. I'm going to play sports. Like, we're going to high school.
Yeah.
And then so I was able to do that. Funny story is my dad was like, okay, we'll go to high school. We'll go to high school in Maui, because I love Maui. That's where I grew up, but we traveled a lot, but I've always really loved Maui. And I think I was in the 7th grade when I had this conversation with my dad, because the 6th grade was my first full year of school in one place. I remember the end of 6th grade, I looked at my report card and I had 4 quarters of grades. And I was like, we've done a full year here in one place. And I showed this to my dad. I was like, look how cool this is. And he was like, let's get the fuck out of here. Pack your bags. and I was like, no. And we like packed our bags and went to Fiji or something.
Jeez.
And then so I was like, okay, I'm going to high school. And he was like, great. We'll go to high school like once you're in high school. We go to Fiji. We go to this like sort of progressive school where it's all on computers. And we had to take a test to get placed in our grades, right?
Type in tests.
I was like, okay, let's do this. I go into this placement test, give it my all. I'm like, I'm testing out of this. I'm going to high school. Tested out of the 7th grade, out of 3 quarters of the 8th grade. So I had 1 quarter left of 8th grade at this time. Did the quarter in Fiji, and I was like, we're going to high school. So we moved back to Hawaii, and I got to do like the second half of the year in Hawaii, and then started high school. So that was fun. It was a fun little.
Oh my gosh! Did your sister like school, or not really?
Needed school. My sister was not into it.
Okay.
She was.
Did she resent you for making y'all go back to school?
Yeah, a little bit. She actually ended up moving to Fiji like a year later.
Oh wow! So you guys split.
Really, yeah. She really liked Fiji. She really liked the slow pace of it. She liked living with my mom, where like you could get away with anything. She just like vibed with it a lot more. Me and my sister are polar opposites, and sort of always have been. So that was sort of like it sort of made sense.
Yeah. Yeah, show us your puppy. Show us your dog, Mochi. Amanda has the dog mascot of Mochi.
It just rained, and there's a giant pot full of water, and he just stuck his whole face in it.
Baby.
He like likes to swim. Baby. So he like.
Oh my gosh, he's truly your dog.
Yeah, exactly. He's a big baby.
Oh my goodness.
Okay, so I'm in high school. My sister moves to Fiji. It's just me and my dad. And my dad got really sick. He got really sick when I was a sophomore in high school. He drank a lot when he was younger, big like party travel guy. And oh my gosh, he's like literally snorkeling. He's got his like face in a thing of water.
Yeah.
I wanted to show you, but he just he's like fully wet now. Good work, Kava. Sorry, I messed up the stream.
No, totally fine. You placed it back perfectly.
Okay, cool.
Looks great.
Okay, sorry, I'll keep this moving. So
that's great.
So then, long story short, my dad definitely ran into some emotional turbulence raising two teenage girls. I think it was really fun for him raising kids, but then, you know, teenagers are not easy. Yeah. Teenage girls are not easy. Yeah. And I think he found it really overwhelming. He was a really emotional guy. So he never drank my whole life. I had never known him as a drinking person, because it seemed like that was something he did before kids. Right. But he started to sort of get into his feelings a little bit, started drinking again, and just like instantly got super sick. Like it all happened really, really fast. And so we got sick when I was a sophomore in high school. It was just me and him. He didn't really want to tell his family or anyone. I was too young to sort of really realize what was going on. Right. You know, I was like 15. My friends and I were drinking. So I didn't really see it as this like life or death thing. Kids, man. But so my dad got really sick and I was taking care of him, and I've always been pretty sort of just intuitive about things, and I just sort of had a feeling that it was serious, and like more serious than he was letting on, but that there was nothing that I was really going to be able to do about it because I was a child. Right. And it happened pretty sort of suddenly. Like my dad got sick, and then like within 6 months he passed away. Died of liver failure. From just like building, just sort of a lifetime of building up these bad habits. Drinking's not good for you.
My mother would love for you to say that to me. We've been fighting about drinking a lot lately.
Who's been fighting about drinking?
My mother and I. Yeah.
It's slippery slope, you know. It's a lot of fun, but it's also really not good for you. And I think that, you know, we think that we're young and invincible, and in many ways we are, but it's also wild to think about the human body, and it's the miracle it is that it works, right. But it's also so fragile. Yeah. So my dad passed away when I was 16. There was nobody else there.
Yeah. I lived with did you have, I mean, I just came off, I had a funeral last week actually, and like seeing, you know, and there were 6 adults around, right? Like, how did you can talk about death. How did you even did you call someone? Like, was he in a hospital? Like you?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. There was nobody there. Like, and it wasn't until like he was in the hospital and his doctors were having really serious conversations with me about making decisions where I was like, damn, I got to get someone in here. I'm 16 years old. Like, I have no idea what's going on. Yeah. And at that point I called his brother, which was like his closest family member, called my sister in Fiji. I was like, you should probably get over here. But even then, like, to be perfectly honest, no one really took it seriously. No one like took me seriously, like, until my dad had already passed away. It wasn't until like I was making phone calls where I was like, we gotta set up a funeral. Did anyone even come? It was wild. It was very, very wild.
Wow.
My family on both sides are really, really interesting. They're really complex, really emotionally unavailable. But I didn't really get the option to do that. I got sort of really thrust into making hard decisions really early on. Kava is swimming. Kava.
Kava baby.
Like, Kava, look at his face. He's dripping wet.
Oh my god.
Went
Oh
for
my
a
god.
swim
Oh my
in a
god.
pot of water.
Oh my god.
It's so funny. So yeah, so I just really like, I instantly sort of had to figure it out, had to start taking care of myself. My dad's brother was supposed to be my guardian, was not interested. Didn't do it. So I actually this was junior year of high school. So I was like, okay, like I gotta finish high school and then I'll figure out what happens. I'll go to college or something. So I actually lived with a family friend for a year to finish high school. And then I got into Pepperdine. I was like applying to schools.
I looked at Pepperdine. I just like the concept of it. I was like, school in California, the beach, like that seems nice.
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting because my plan wasn't even to go to college, and we were very rogue. Like my conversations with my dad were, I wanted to go to this film school in Vancouver.
Ooh.
Like that's what I was gonna do. My other option was like, I'm gonna move to Australia for a year and just see what happens. But my family and then the surrounding adults were like, college is the structure that will benefit you.
So they cared enough to put you into their structure, but like not to like care for you. Okay.
Well, and I think when it came down to it, I think they cared a lot because I got into Pepperdine. I got into a great school, and it was in California, so it was nearby. So then I went to Pepperdine, but still just like fully fronting that I had my shit together. There was no sort of there was no plan, there was no real support. Yeah. Half of the people acted like, and this is a lot of people in my family sort of like just associated me with death. Like really sort of whenever I would like just being around me or like talking to me, people sort of like acted like death was contagious and like I like had it. And it was really interesting. And it's a concept that I've like lived with for a long time and really think about. Because everyone is just so afraid of dying. Yeah. Yes. Just so afraid of the concept of death. No one wants to talk about it. No one wants to, and if it happens, you're supposed to just move on just immediately. You're not supposed to dwell in death at all. Even all of like sort of the therapeutic responses to it are like run, evade, get out of there. Whereas for me, death was a really defining part of my identity really, really early on. At a time where, at an age where you're sort of just starting to build your own identity. Yeah. This was like a major sort of branding that happened to me really early on. In my family, at school. People just always really like associated me with death. And it's another thing that's like I've really learned from and have like really learned to see a lot of beautiful aspects of life through that I think a lot of people might miss out on because there's just so much fear around it. Yeah. But I mean, the opposite of death is life. And every moment that we're not dead, we get to be alive. And that's the real magic, and sometimes I think it takes really coming face to face with that to realize what a blessing it is to be alive and how much, it's all equal, right? The void of death equates to just like the magnitude of life and the possibilities that can come from it.
I love that. Wait, I love that. What did you said the void of death magnifies
equates to the magnitude of life.
Yeah. I love that.
And it's true. And I feel like that's sort of the philosophy that I have sort of taken on and championed ever since then is that, life is short. Life is really, really short. for you and for the people around you. And I think that from a very early age, I was really able to realize that that life is short and to just live it to the absolute fullest. That there's so much in each and every day that's just so full of potential and full of love and full of just sort of the joy of being alive. And you really don't know. You don't know what could happen tomorrow. You could die tomorrow. That's just a reality. You could die choking on your dinner tonight. Probably.
Yeah.
You know, like you could die just in the car on the way to the grocery store. Like that's just a reality, and that shit happens to people, which is
how do you think? So I feel like there's when it comes to like the concept of death, or this kind of like, there's like the live life to the fullest, and there's like not think about it at all and just kind of like do your day to day. I think sometimes like the live your life to the fullest can become this like, you know, the crazy YOLO, or like the kind of the nothing matters, like it doesn't, whatever, you know, I guess like how do you practically live your days to the fullest to where it's not just the like cliche, to where it's not the cliche, you know, or maybe it is a cliche, I don't know, but I think like, I think at least I struggle with like, I don't know what living my life to the fullest, I guess, means or like looks like when it's not these like really big, exciting, you know, like we're planning a new Mochi trip right now, right? And it's like I'm looking at the last Mochi trip and I'm like, okay, yeah, that's me. Like, of course I would love to live my life in fucking Japan with everyone every day, you know, and like maybe one day we can get there, but it's like in the like day to day, you know, how do you, I guess, make your life magical, or like make it, you know, what it not should be but could be?
Totally. And this is a wonderful question, because I do think that I and everyone should err on the side of YOLO. I think that like, why not live every day as if it was the best day of your life, you know? Like, why not just go all out every single day? Even if say, and this happens to me a lot too, like I really like to chill. Like I'm a big chiller, you know, I could lie on a beach for days, like, and just not be phased. And sometimes that's going all out. Sometimes going all out is sitting on your couch for 4 hours, reading a book or something, you know, something that might seem like a suck of time or be unproductive or something like that. Yeah. But that's also like going all out. The way that I see it is I try to live every day as if it were my whole life. Just like proportionally, right? Like, of course, you know, we have to work, we have to exercise, we have to, you know, feed the cat. Like, there's definitely things you have to do. But like proportionally, I'd like to think about it like, okay, so today I go to the gym, I do some work, I read, but I also like go on a hike or go to the beach or maybe go to a music show or something. And I think about it just like in proportions, you know? If this day was my whole life, I spent this portion of it working, this portion of it taking care of myself, and like this portion of it having fun or doing something that was inspiring.
Yeah. Do you do any oh my god. Wow, hello. This is the pets episode today. Hey, don't chew my shoulder. Do you do any kind of like manifesting, visualization? Like, do you keep a list? Do you have goals? Because like I think something too that I get crippled by is like when I think about my whole life or like what I want, like I do get very overwhelmed as to like, it's kind of like when people talk about goals, right? They're like, yeah, you can have like a 5-10 year goal, but like the important thing is to like break it down, like make a SMART goal, right? Like break it down into these like digestible pieces. And I think like it was really easy, you know, in like school and in college to be like, okay, like, cause like the segments are almost there for you, right? It's like you take classes, and then if you're part of organizations, you usually have like events, and then you do these kinds of things. But then it's like when you break out of that, you make your own structure. I mean, you have work, but work looks different for everyone. But it's like in terms of like goals or like big picture things, or like designing the life you want, to create. Like that is such a daunting concept for me. And so it's like, and then it becomes really easy just to like my day to day just as it becomes very ritualistic, and not in the way that I set the ritual, but more so like the ritual has already been set for me because it's like what's standard, right? Like wake up, coffee, phone, coffee, podcast, work, nap, dinner, bed. Like I don't know.
This makes sense, and this again I think goes to Drake really nailed it with the YOLO. He really did. He's hilarious. But I think that it's important to dream absolutely large, like largest possible. And I think that it's daunting for a lot of people, and it's daunting. It can be daunting in different ways on different days and different aspects of your life. What do you want out of love? What do you want out of career? What do you want your house to look like? And I think it's important to aim just super big and not worry about the details so much, and sort of just one foot in front of the other towards the big dream, and then let whatever comes up along the way guide you. I think that sometimes it can be intimidating to think, okay, so I want a farm in Hawaii one day. Like I want to retire just like naked in the garden, just,
Yes. Yes.
And it's hard to be like, okay, well, so right now, do I start making a financial plan so I can do I start looking at properties? Well, I think yes and no. I think the idea is to be like, okay, what do I really want and why? And how will I feel when I get it? And how can I bring those feelings into my daily life? Say I want to. That. Yeah, I think that's how you bring it into today, into the present, is you sort of follow the feeling, right?
Yeah.
When I retire on a farm, I'm going to feel really calm and at peace because I'm going to be able to spend a lot of time. I love it.
I have no idea. She's never, you're special because she has never done this on a podcast yet.
She's into it. She's manifesting right now.
She's so. Tell me your secrets, Oko. What's her life gonna be, Kat?
Whatever she wants.
Yeah.
But I think it's about following the feeling, right? Like I want this sort of retirement compound because I will feel calm and feel at peace because I'll be surrounded by nature. I'll be in the sun. I'll make my own schedule,
Yeah.
I can bring those feelings into my day to day, I can go on a walk and look at some trees. I can go sit in the sun when the sun comes out and have just like a little micro dose of the big dream. And I think in your...
Oh, I love that. There's so many good one-liners. There's so many good micro dose of your big dream.
Right.
Good. You were ready. I cannot believe that you were like, I shouldn't be on this podcast. I'm not interested. If you don't shut the
But yeah, I feel like it's your brain doesn't know the difference between real memories and just thoughts that you've had. It like, if you think about something over and over again, your brain will literally think it's a memory and think that it happened.
Interesting.
And that's good and bad. If you're imagining some terrible thing,
right,
your brain's going to think that actually happened and start sort of subconsciously treating you like that happened to you. But it also works in the positive. If you keep sort of thinking about what you want, how it feels when you're close to what you want, you start sort of really embodying that on a like cellular level,
right,
subconscious, and then that'll just bring you closer to the things that you want. And I get it. Like life is not easy for a lot of people. I have a Pisces moon, so I spend a lot of time like thinking about, like I spend so much time thinking about like girls in brothels in India as if like they're my sisters, like I have so much compassion for literally everyone that I very much understand that life is not easy. and not everyone gets to sit in LA and meditate in the sun and dream the big dream. But at the same time, it works. It is, that is the truth, though, right? It happens the same, where if there's someone you see these people in these terrible situations and they're still smiling, like they're still like hugging their loved ones and like can tap into that, what feels good, and trying to magnetize more of that, you know? So I feel like the circumstances are so very real, but all that, there's a lot of power within your feelings and within like your mind. There's so much power in your mind, that I just think it could be like better utilized. It's just a tool, you know?
Yeah.
You can, life is really up for grabs. It's a free for all. Everything is made up. Go all out. That's the gist of it.
So when you went to college, it sounded like you actually want to do film school, but you went to Pepperdine. And then like the subsequent events after, which like I would love to hear, did you find that this idea of a big dream or a big vision was still guiding you, and did that change, or were you even aware of it? Curious how that, and like up until now.
To be honest, I took losing my dad and not having any sort of guidance really, really hard. Like I was totally lost in the woods for a really long time. I feel like I had no goals. I had no sort of vision. I was still very much like cloaked in this idea that like I was gonna die like soon, and so I never really even thought to plan ahead. That really held me for a really long time. I'm gonna say until I was maybe like 24.
Wow.
Did I like not take life seriously because I like thought I was gonna die.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's like wild to think about that. I had that like deep in my subconscious.
Yeah.
That like death was around the corner, so just like have fun, just strictly have fun. That was definitely a thing for a long time.
Wow.
Was just strictly trying to have fun, and that's also like a core part of my personality. Is like having fun and finding like the good times and things.
Right.
But I think it definitely was pretty submersed in that. In college, after college, even after college, I had this serious relationship, and like our relationship was just totally focused on like having fun and just like ignoring long-term things. And it really wasn't until I turned sort of 24, 25, and I was in this relationship, and I started to realize that the partner that I was with very much, I don't know, the energy was like that I was this broken person who like needed to be like cared for. Like that I was never going to outgrow this sort of terrible thing that happened to me. And it sort of like fed into this death aura that I felt like was sort of being imposed on me.
Yeah.
And just like as that was happening, I think that I really connected to a deep part of myself that wanted the big dream, that would rather like keep trying and potentially fail than like not try at all and die. Even if dying was this like comfortable death where you're just partying and sorry, it's raining.
That's
I'm gonna
okay.
switch.
Yeah, no worries. Gosh, your backyard view is wild.
I know, I like face this mountain.
No, it's stunning. Okay, let's get you back
into like a good
into your position. There's like a slight delay, so let's see.
Is that okay?
Great. Wonderful.
Am I like centered?
Yeah, you are. You're great.
Cool.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I think that I was in this relationship where I saw it really sort of like closing in on me, where I was gonna like be with this person who was going to like care for me because I was too frail and broken to do anything else. Um, and like that was gonna be the rest of my life, that I was just gonna be like cared for because I couldn't care for myself, sort of thing.
Yeah.
And I was like, I just wasn't buying it. I don't know. Deep down, I just wasn't buying it. I was like, I can do this. You know, anyone, anywhere can do whatever they want. Like, there's so much potential in each of us, um, and it's not easy to keep pushing and going for things. Um, but it's so important. You know, that's like the juiciest bits of life are really just going for things that you're interested in and that you're passionate about and seeing what happens. Yeah, and so something about that and sort of seeing it closing on me where I was like, I need to radically shift all of this.
Yeah.
Uh, and so left that relationship, moved to London to do a master's in contemporary art. Um, and that was sort of like a major point for me where I was like, just go all out, go move somewhere, do something that you're interested in but don't think you can, you know.
Yeah.
I didn't come from like an art background. My Pepperdine degree was in international business, but I've always been really interested in art and people's ability to express themselves and also to sort of express emotions and things that were like traditionally taboo, right? I kept sort of returning to this. There's things in life that no one wants to talk about, that people are like too afraid to talk about, but that's what artists are for, right? There are totally people out there who are like willing to just like bleed their hearts and show you what we're made of as people, you know?
Yeah.
And I found myself just really attracted to that and people like that. That's sort of how I got into working with artists. And yeah, it's been a great sort of career angle for me because of that. Like, I love to see people be themselves and be expressive about it. I like to see people just be like super authentically themselves, as weird and wild and wonderful as that looks like.
Yeah.
And be able to express that openly, because everybody is so unique and so incredible. And again, like this, there shouldn't be a mold. There shouldn't be a standard way of living. We shouldn't all be doing the same thing at all. Not even a tiny bit. You know how they're sort of talking about taking away standardized testing in schools?
I've seen that. Yeah, I've seen some schools start to like certain Ivies and stuff, right, are like starting to like not require like what is it, like ACT, SAT, etc.
And that makes so much sense, because it seems totally preposterous to have a standardized test for people when everyone is so wildly different.
Yeah.
And I feel like we live in such a cool world now, like 2022, where the young people are not having it. They're done conforming.
I know. I have a cousin who just graduated college, and a cousin who just graduated. Well, and I guess not just. I guess it's been a year, which is crazy. So they both graduated last year, 2021, and like they're, it's like a young Gen Z and an elder Gen Z, and you get kind of like both into the spectrum. But yeah, the common denominator is like zero fucks given. Just like, they're not putting up with your shit. They do not care about repercussions. They do not. It is like they're just like out doing their thing, and they're going to let you know how they feel, and they're going to move on unfazed. And I'm like, it is amazing. It is wild. Like, I thought like Greta was it, but I'm like, oh no, there's shit wilder than Greta. Like there's like,
no, the young people today are, and I love it. I love to see it. Nothing makes me happier than the Gen Zers. I'm like, go off. Like, no one's doing the same thing twice. No one cares what anyone else is doing.
They
like,
roast everybody. Like, I love, like, they just like literally on TikTok, just like watching Gen Z just like literally come for everyone. Like, no one is safe. They will they will like, what's the word? I'm like, I was about to say josh you. Like that's such a stupid thing to say. It's such an old person thing to say. But like they'll make fun of you and like they will like call shit out and they're just like, this is dumb. And I'm like, I'm too scared to say that as like, I guess, you know, a like millennial, like, ugh, you know, like I'm too into like what, like respectability politics and like I can't. Sorry, I'm trying to control my chair, and all that shit. But I think it's so good. But I wonder too, though, something that does scare me about them, the Gen Z, the youth, is like there is like when I was talking about kind of the YOLO, you know, / nothing matters. They are very much in the nothing matters camp, which like I get. Like the world is not in a phenomenal place and so it can be hard. Like I mean I struggle with like visualizing, so I can't imagine like someone younger. But I'm like, I've seen some younger, like for example, I think, you know, like a lot of the kids that have turned to like organizing and movement making and things like that is like good. But I have seen with, at least like with my own two guys, like just this fear of there not being like working towards something that has no purpose. And I'm like, ooh, that's scary because like there shouldn't be a generation that's like disillusioned. I mean, I think they already are. But I guess like I don't know how does one motivate a Gen Z? I guess they should be good at themselves. I don't know. You can't. I don't know.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's highly interesting, right? Because in one corner, it's like, I mean, nothing does really matter, right?
Yeah.
Like imagine being young right now and thinking like, oh yeah, I really want to like save for retirement. Like that's what I'm going to base my whole life around. When the world literally might not be around. Like they are told, like they could be like the trash could block out the sun, and they could live underground. Like the young people I can't even imagine. Like because already we know that life is a free for all and that we've made up these institutions and sort of structures to make it easier so we can all cohabitate. But those were all sort of choices that we made. None of that's like, if I just walk down my street naked right now, like I can do that. Like I can set my house on fire right now for fun. You know what I mean? Like you can do, there are no physical rules.
Sure.
Made these agreements to make life more comfortable so we can like cohabitate with each other.
Right. Yeah, the idea of agreement. Yeah, that's interesting.
But I feel like I can see how young people today might not be interested in an agreement that doesn't really suit them. But you're right. We also don't want to go strictly in that camp because then no one's going to get anything done, right? We need the structure so we can build for the future. You know, we need to keep doing research so we can make better medicine and better materials and things like that, right? And not everything's all fun and games and glamorous. So I do think that there's definitely like the split there. And I think it's just important to find, I think deep down, we want to care for our people, right? Even sort of the people who seem the most selfish or seem the most sort of, oh, Hava, no. Hava. I'm in He's soaking wet. Hava.
What's happening?
Nothing. It's just raining. It never rains. So like a raindrop hits something and he's like, what the fuck is that? Yeah, I think fundamentally, and maybe this isn't true because they're sociopaths, but fundamentally we want to be of service. People want to be of service. People need to feel needed and want to feel needed, want to be of service to people. So I think the balance is, how can you find something that speaks to your soul so specifically and uniquely to your soul that you don't feel like you're agreeing to something that you're not interested in, but that's also going to help the greater good, you know?
Yeah. Have you like looked into like the Ikigai concept?
I don't remember it. Tell me.
So it's and I apologize if I butcher it. Maggie actually gave me a little journal of it. like it's kind of like a little like workbook journal, but it's basically like where like your skills and your passions and like the needs of the world like overlap, and then like in that tiny space is like where you like this concept lives. So it's like you're living in your like most aligned kind of state that meets a need. So it's literally like what you talked about, right? Like what like is unique to you that gets you excited, that you, because I think the idea like I was gonna say that you're good at, but I think good, that's like a very kind of subjective thing, but it's like something that like you can contribute, something that you don't mind contributing, that then also meets this need. Um, I mean, I love thinking about the concept of community. I think particularly because like I'm an only child, and I actually spent a lot of my time alone as a kid. So I think it's really interesting that I've like, I mean, I have my like people who like spend a lot of time with me will know that I have my severe loner moments where like I will just like go MIA, but then I'll come back like full force and I'm like, but I like swing really hard. But I like my desire is literally just to be in consistent community. You know, and like so much of what gets me excited is around like similar to you, I think, with the artist, right? Like I love the idea of like a patron, but not in a patronizing way, but like a patron, like someone like I myself am not an artist, but like if I can create spaces for people and cultivate an environment, make connections, like enable people to like do what they do best, that's when I feel like 10 out of 10. But it's like all of those things are so community dependent, right? It's like I send you, it's so funny, I started like a, you know, the Mochi LA like Instagram group, I have the Mochi New York group, and I love sending people stuff because I'm like, oh, like you guys should go to this together and it'd be so fun, and like go do this, and like kind of like curating these like moments of like gathering for people. But like I think, and I think we're seeing a resurgence of like the value of community. I mean, I thought COVID was going to really do it, and I think it did it for a little bit, and then I think it fell away. But I do think, not to make this like, I mean, it is a Mochi podcast, but I was going to say, I think in like in Web3, right, like this like DAO thing, wave right now, it's really just communities, right? Like it's really just like groups of people, and I think some are doing it really well, and a lot don't know how to do it, because I don't think, especially in the States, we were taught how to like build and maintain community outside maybe of like things like sports or, you know, kind of like organized group activities, but like on your own, building a community, going through the trials and tribulations, you know, like in college I took a class, you know, and we learned about like, what is it like, there's like storming, norming, performing. There's like all these like phases of like organizational change that happen. It's like org science basically. But it's like a group like forms, and then it like hits bumps, so it storms, and then it has to have this like reckoning, and then you like come out on the other side stronger, ideally, or you collapse, right? But it's like these cycles are like very normal, and like there's literally like whole studies around like how to maintain organizations, whether that's like in a company or like, you know, just like in a group. And I don't know, I think it's so important. I think it's going to become more important because those structures that we were depending upon are breaking down. And it's like, so it's like mutual aid, for example, like when you can't get your bills paid, where do you go? You know, if you don't have family, like where do you go? If you are an artist, right? Like, I mean, artists, and like I would love to hear your thoughts on this. Like, art and fine art is what it is because of community. You know, like it's like who gets placed in galleries, who gets represented, like who buys what. It's community. That is a form of community. You know, yeah. That was my little tangent. I don't know where I was going with that. But.
No, and it speaks to how fundamentally, and I think capitalism has been avoiding this for a long time because they want you to feel you can work harder and more efficiently when you're alone, and you know you go faster alone, you go farther together,
right?
You know, yeah. And we've just been conditioned to think like it's all about output, and the easiest form of output and just cranking out mass anything and everything, and that's success, whereas that's not the case, because fundamentally we want to connect, and connecting with people is how you get deeper within yourself, and that's sort of the name of the game, right? I mean,
Oh, I love that. Connecting with people is how you get deeper with yourself. What do you mean by that?
well, it's, you have, for example, you go and you meet a bunch of new people every single night. You end up having the same conversation over and over again. Who are you? Where are you from? What do? You don't really like get to get deeper, but
Yeah.
the more you can connect with people, the more intimate you can get with people, the more you can talk about deeper things and investigate yourself a little bit more, and the whole universe that is within you, that is reflected externally. You can get to know that better and like get deeper, um and kava uh, um and that's why it's so important to have community. And like, we live in America where you turn 18 and you're like kicked out of your house, and that's another like standard form of operation that's just total trash, because it makes people feel isolated. A lot of people can't even afford to do that. You end up being shamed if you like need to live with your family or need to live with a bunch of roommates, whereas that's probably the more sustainable and more beneficial option for everyone. I read this great book. Shoot, I should know the author's name, but it's called The Art of Intimacy, and it's about African intimacy rituals, and it talks a lot about the tribe and how everything is about the tribe. It's like, when you marry someone, you marry the tribe. When you have kids, those are the tribe's kids. And it's because we need all the variations. Like, people need options. Again, what if you have parents that you just don't relate to at all, and you're just supposed to be like, okay, well, that's my whole world, and I don't fit into my whole world. No, you got to go find an auntie or an uncle or a cousin or someone who like can meet you where you are, and then keep exploring your world like that. You know, it's that makes a lot of sense to me. One of my favorite books, it's called Island by Aldous Huxley. Aldous Huxley wrote Brave New World. He also did The Doors of Perception. He's, a great philosopher on societal systems, but also a grade A tripper. And Island was a book that was published posthumously. It was what he was working on when he died, and they published it after he died. And it's about this. It's sort of like revisiting the concept of Brave New World, where there's like the sophisticated people, and there's like the savages all on this island, and the savages live in this like tribe culture where like it's not monogamous, and they do lots of psychedelics and stuff like this. But it's a really interesting sort of play on like society, and like how that's not a terrible option, and it's definitely not impossible. And I totally agree. I don't know how it happened, but Web3 has totally sort of championed the idea of community and the idea of sort of like and it probably goes hand in hand with sort of like letting go of the giant institutions that run everything, letting go of needing to be corporate and having that be just the only option, and thinking, okay, what if I found a smaller group with more specific interests where we can connect deeper and end up making better output, I really don't know how Web3 caught on to that. Maybe just because like the internet, and like you can meet people on the internet that you like, that you vibe with, that you might have never met in your hometown or something,
Yeah, I think there's a few kind of, elements of it. I think like the open source, so there's like an entire community of like open source software contributors, and like that has like Mozilla is kind of like the main company or they're not even a company, organization kind of behind, or not behind it, but that I think does it really well and has like spearheaded a lot of the efforts. But like Web3 ultimately, right, is like a technological movement. I don't know if movement's the right word. That it began, you know, with like creating a decentralized computing system, you know, in which anyone can contribute and anyone can participate and anyone can see it. Like that's kind of the core of like the functional technology. So like you take those concepts and then you apply them like, you know, it's like decentralized finance, decentralized governance, decentralized this, and now a DAO, you know, which is decentralized autonomous organization, which I think like what we're seeing and what I think we're going to continue to see, like there's so much research on organizations, on governance, on, you know, how people contribute in different contexts, how you can like kind of like the critical mass, you know, what's the target number for participants in a community, like how to incentivize community participation, like the gamification, like all of this stuff. And I think that the nerds that are very into that, which is I myself like self-identified, that I think hasn't hit there's like this camp of like the people who like read the white papers of the technology and like are very much into like the like philosophy and the ethos of it. And then for better or for worse, it hit mainstream and concepts resonated, which like concepts of Bitcoin resonated in 2008, concepts, you know, of decentralized finance or whatever really peaked in 2018. And now we have, you know, 2021 was kind of the NFT period. And now, you know, 2022 is like DAOs. And I think that people are, they like certain words. I don't even think it's words. Actually, I think it's just like, I think it's just vibes. But like, I think certain vibes resonate with people, right? People are like, yeah, like I want to like regain control over my music or of my finances or like my data or like, yeah, actually like there's kind of these like, you know, crypto anarchist like subtones that I think I don't even know if people, I actually think that a lot of people don't even know who are like in the space right now, like, which we're not calling Web3, which is so funny, like Web3 world. Like, I don't even think that they're aware actually of like how, I don't think people know yet how powerful like it can be and how much can be unlocked, but how much it also depends upon coordination and communication and participation. And I think it's fascinating when people join, you know, like 50 Discord groups and then are like, I'm overwhelmed. And you're like, how many communities are you in real life? You know, like like, I struggle with like maintaining like lots of different friendships, for example. Like I know a fuck ton of people and then I will feel guilty because I like can't maintain all of them, right? And it's like I naturally will move to certain people because like those are my close friends and those change over seasons. And like those are individual beings, not even communities in which people like assume they have to participate, you know, to be a member or like whatever. And so I think there's everyone's getting a crash course, and I hope that people will come away with the desire to like more intentionally build and maintain and preserve community, and not just be like, wow, that really sucked, fuck that. You know, because I think like that's why I put so much energy into Mochi, honestly, and I think why like a lot of other people do as well, but yeah, I think like, you know, we used to say like with like when I was like working actively on like crypto stuff, you know, we'd always be like, the best blockchain product is like one you don't know you're even using blockchain, right? Like the idea like the user experience is so seamless, you know, and not technical and bulky. And I think similarly, like it'd be cool if people are like interacting with a DAO, they don't even know that it is one, or that there is, you know, kind of these like underlying things. It just is like a new way of interacting with people and getting things done that feels really easy.
Yeah, that feels better, right?
Yeah, because I think it should feel better. It should not feel worse. It might feel worse for a little bit because it's new, but like ultimately it should feel better. Otherwise, people won't want it. Like,
well, ultimately, people will get the choice again. You know, like you're saying, if you join 80 discords, like you signed up for that. No one is making you do that. You know, get out of the ones that you don't like. You know, you know.
yes, yes,
I think it. Yeah, Mochi's a beautiful example of how how much more high quality experiences and relationships you can have when you just focus on high quality people of similar interests. And just that, similar interests. You don't have to be similar in any other way except maybe you like music, you like to dance.
Yeah, I think that's the only one we have, especially like as we're scaling. I'm like, which is beautiful, but yeah, it's like, yeah, do you like to dance?
Yeah, exactly. And I think it comes back to connection and the deeper, connection is love, right? The fundamentalness of wanting to connect with people is wanting to love people and feel loved and feel valued for just who you are and what you can contribute to the world, but mostly just for being you. Mostly just for being you, the unique version of you. There's only one you, and that's the magic of it, but that's also totally daunting to think about. It can be a very lonely hill. But it's the balance of being celebrated for being how unique you are and being able to celebrate other people. And that's like the magic. That's when you're like in the sweet spot of just the human experience almost,
Yeah.
Is realizing that we're all the same. Like we're all made of the same stuff.
Yeah.
But we're all wildly unique, and there's a lot to celebrate there.
Yeah.
There's pretty much all stuff to celebrate.
Yeah.
If you start hating on people, that's just like a signal that there's somewhere that you need to be celebrating yourself more or celebrating your people more,
Oh, can you elaborate on that?
I just feel like there's a lot of.
I was gonna ask about like jealousy and envy in community, because I think like when you enter, it's like, again, as like someone who like literally was like loner numero uno, right? Like only child. Like when college was like my first entry into like community, and while it was beautiful, I also found myself, and like I continued to do so. Even as Mochi grows, I'm like, people come in and I'm like, and I have to check myself, because I'm like, what? That is not the vibe that I'm trying to give out. But then I get you. There is, I think, comparison and look, like, I think those things are natural and normal, but I think they are signals. And so I'm curious, but it was something that I was not used to, again, being alone and also being in a community, because like your position in a community also changes and ebbs and flows, and like community changes and ebbs and flows, and that doesn't necessarily speak to you and like your identity. But that can be hard especially when you're joining a new one, right? And you have to like come in and like integrate into something that already exists. But yeah, like hating, jealousy, envy, all of that.
Absolutely. And especially in the age of social media, where we're literally just which has been designed for us to compare ourselves to each other. I go from being able to just sitting at home to now like getting a slideshow of what all these other people are doing. Whereas like that's not the present moment, Yeah. Like the present moment is just if I'm alone, which is fine, but it turns into all of a sudden I'm looking at all these people, giving their greatest hits, and yeah, the comparing and the envy and the jealousy can be totally crushing, and it's totally unavoidable in today's day and age. It's wild.
Yeah.
I'm so glad that I didn't like grow up with social media, because that can't be easy when you're trying to form your sense of self and just constantly having, like how I was telling you, when I was a kid, I had no parameters for comparison. Now it's just relentless.
Oh yeah.
Comparisons,
and I think it's interesting on that point. Like there was something, I think it came out recent, I mean like past couple years probably, but it was like, what career do kids want, these days? And like influencer or like YouTuber was number one. And I think about, I love studying like social media and like pop culture and these, it's like fascinating to me. But what I've noticed, like, there are the mold for what an influencer is or what like a vlogger is so specific. And like I don't know if there's been a career path, like you say doctor, lawyer, athlete, like engineer, whatever, like sure. And maybe so for the ones that are education based, like your mold is the education, but like your brain ultimately, like you can maybe read other people's things or see other people's work and you can maybe think about your work, but like you're not really, like you're still kind of working on your own talent, right? And then like with an athlete, you have to get your own signature. You can study other people's signature moves, but you have to develop like your own signature move, and like you have to work on your talent. For something like and being an influencer, like they're all they're all the same except there's like two or three that are really big personalities that are like their own, but then there's like two or three, and then like the next layer of the pyramid is like everyone that looks and sounds exactly the same trying to become those two or three. And I think it's so like, and the speech patterns, the intonations, the way they dress. Gia Tolentino, who was one of my favorite authors, wrote this incredible New Yorker piece years ago called The Instagram Face, and she like went around to plastic surgeons in LA, and like they all have the same face, and it's like all of a sudden, like if that is what everyone is aspiring to, like it literally is just like shrinking. I think it's, you have to compare it to like six, like I feel like before it's like be unique, be your own star, whatever, and now it's like be the best Bella Hadid ripoff you can be, which like Bella Hadid is a Carla Bruni ripoff. So like it's like, but it's like be the best, like as close as you can get to this formula, you will succeed. And that is so scary to me. Like uniqueness is like not, even though I think Gen Z is like, yeah, we're unique, like ultimately, like I do think they are all kind of falling into like either they want to be like a Bella and or like a Kylie, or they want to be like Billie Eilish. So it's like,
totally.
But it's like comparison is key. You have to compare to succeed almost in that case, right?
Yeah, it's how it's been designed, and it's the total antithesis of anything worth life.
Wild.
You know, wild. Like that's how you'll absolutely smother your inner child, is just by totally disregarding who you are before anything else.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely like a really tricky one, but I think the key is to sort of just like see it as inspiration and then keep going.
Yeah.
Yeah. When I'm on Instagram and feel something like a weirdness come up where I'm like, huh, why don't I have that? Or like, I want that. I try and just be like, okay, cool. Like I'm going to put this on, like, I would like to go to that vacation place. I'm going to keep that in mind, for the future. Or like, oh, I like that shirt. Maybe I'll keep an eye out for one or something.
Yeah.
I think it's important to sort of take it as inspiration.
Yeah.
That you can weave into your own sense of self.
Yeah.
And then move on. But it's crippling. The comparison is crippling. And it comes from like a scarcity mindset, right? You think, oh, this person has that, it means that I can't have that. Whereas we should think about it like, oh, this person has that, I can have that too. Because that's just as true. That's the truth, right? Just because someone else has something doesn't mean you can't have it.
Yeah.
Maybe they have it right now, but you might not have it tomorrow, and you could have it for the next 10 years. You never know, But you give your energy to just the void, the black hole that is comparing yourself to people. You'll waste all your time.
Yeah. No, I concur. Okay, wait. So one of the things you also want to talk about that I want to get your thoughts on is love. Should we talk about love?
Yeah. Or I think it comes down to sort of like connection, right? I think that like the basis of life is feeling good, and to feel good, you have to love yourself and love other people. And I think sometimes people think it's like a formula. Oh, if I have this bod and this money and this car and this plan, then people will love me.
Mm.
But it's so much about just, I mean, we're all here, right? we like ended up with these lives on this earth at this time, and I can't help but think it's for a reason, you know? And that is enough to sort of to be happy about, you know? I think that the fact that we're even alive is like worthy of love, right? Like the fact that I'm here doing the thing, like I should love myself for that. Love myself absolutely relentlessly for that. I'm getting rained out a little bit. And I'm also just like a grotesque romantic, like truly gross.
Wait, what does that mean? What does that look like? Like, what? Give us an idea of how that manifests itself.
I'm just gonna try and scoot us out of the rain.
Yeah.
Okay, there we go. I just feel like I said, I feel like we build all these structures and whatnot so we can like cohabitate with people and we can make life like comfortable and easy. But I don't think that that's the goal. I think the goal is to like, how deeply can you like love other people and love yourself? You know, like how deeply. We're getting totally rained out. We're going inside.
I mean, that is crazy. Yeah, LA rain, everyone.
Kava, look at Kava. Kava, show us your rainy face. Kava. He's soaked. Okay, sorry.
That's okay. I know. I appreciate your dedication to staying out there. You were out there for like a good bit.
It was really nice.
Oh my gosh, you have the cool dining chair.
Yeah, I love my chair.
I recognize in the beautiful art piece.
Hold on, let me move this back.
Okay.
Kava is totally wet. He looks hilarious. Yeah, so I'm also just like a grotesque romantic. I feel like love is like the best part of the human experience, and like I think because it just compiles so many of the really like interesting parts of life, right? Like being vulnerable, being open to other people, being like willing to accept other people for who they are, wanting to help people grow, wanting to grow yourself, you know, wanting to be supportive, being vulnerable. I feel like these things are so key to sort of just the human experience and to living like a really fulfilling life, and really sort of being emotionally in tune. I know that you're very intuitive and like very connected to your emotions. And so you probably see this too. You probably see people who are so detached from their own feelings, and it's like being a zombie. It's like, how do you, you know, how do you block yourself off from some of like the juiciest bits of life, right?
Yeah. I mean, my kind of theory with it, there's kind of like two. I'm thinking a lot more about like the conditions in which people are like brought up, and like the what, you know, nature versus nurture, and just like how some of these like, you know, core emotional intelligences like EQ is really. You know, it's kind of one of those things like you learn that everyone doesn't think the way you do, and then you start to kind of look around, and then you're like, whoa, like that. It's really not super common, especially I think like in men, right? Like it's like we can play the gender thing, you know, for this, and I think it fits, it works, like, and I think I call myself like a crippling empath. Like I feel so much that it like hurts and like it's debilitating to a point where I have to like tell myself that I need to, like, I can't, like, me killing myself with like emotion and care is not going to be useful, right? But I think that like a lot of people don't know how, like, and they don't know how because either it wasn't modeled for them or they weren't encouraged to like practice it, so they don't have the muscles. And then also I think like, I mean, fear is like a bitch of an emotion that I think is really fucking rampant right now. And I think a lot of people are really, really, really scared, and it manifests in really ugly ways. I think being numb, being apathetic, like those
Mhm.
emotions actually can be scarier than like anger to me. Like being checked out because it's like going on autopilot, and I think like there are moments where people sense and feel and then they're like, no, can't do that, like, and like what I used to be, I definitely had like a robot phase of my life where I was like any emotions that like I didn't feel that were like productive or useful or like that didn't fit into the mold, I was like, nope, not doing that. But then like I look back on those periods of life and I missed out on a lot of like when you are closed off to caring or like to feeling good or bad, it almost is
Mhm.
like it's almost, oh my gosh, it makes me think of Inside Out. I love that movie. I like love that movie so much. And I think like the little like emotions that each other their own character, like they latch to memories, right? Or like they talk about like core memories, and it's like memories are attached to emotion. So it's almost like if you don't have an emotion about something, about a memory, or like if you're living without feeling, it's not gonna stick with you. What's gonna stick with you is like, at least in my experience, like what sticks with you is like being numb. And like that is really, there's a good chunk of when I look back on my life that I'm like it was not neither good nor bad. I just wasn't there, you know? And that I think now that I'm like really, years of therapy, I think the pendulum has swung really far and I'm trying to rein it back in a little bit. Um, then I also, I can look around and I'm like, I think what hurts for me is when I see people pulling themselves back, like people that I care about that won't let themselves feel and pull themselves. It's usually men, and it's like, damn, like I really want you to like lean into it because I think it will be better for you. Like I want more for you because it's the idea of like again, emotions that have to be functional or useful or productive ties to the capitalism and output. Um, but
I mean, we've been totally conditioned to like, do you remember being younger and like the colder you were, like the cooler you were? Like the less like feelings you had, like the cooler you were.
yeah,
You were more likely to
oh,
pull
aloof,
a guy who was
interesting.
like too cool if you didn't care. Like that was attractive.
I think that still is a thing. I still see shit like that on fucking TikTok that like pisses me off. Where I'm like, well, then I guess I'm fucked if that's gonna be really what works. Because like honey cannot hide her emotions. But no, it's so true. It's like the because emotions are scary. Like when you interact with someone who feels their emotions and you don't, that is probably one of the scariest mirrors that you can be presented with. Because, and it's like, I think actually it's interesting when you were talking earlier about like comparison or jealousy or like, hating on people and like what signal is kind of being told. It's like, I think similarly, like when you get irritated by a person who is like very in tune, is it like, why? Why is that? And is it because you feel like you can't be that expressive? Because like I've definitely had that where I'm like, I see some women that I think are just like, they live their lives, and I'm like, and it's like, well, because I feel like I'm in a cage, and it's like, the door's open, but it's
That's exactly it.
yeah,
I feel like if you're trying to numb or trying to ignore your feelings, you're living in like one dimension. You're living 1D. You're like flat, you can't really move around. But then you see people who are fully feeling their feelings and they're in like 4D, fully just like really taking up like the space of their own experience, you know? And when we're talking about like living a fulfilling life, like literally has the word filling in it. Like you want to like fill up
mm,
the space of your experience. And I feel like when you shut down or try and play it cool or be numb, you're flattening yourself and you're stiffening and you can't really move and you can't really like dance with the universe the way that the universe wants you to.
yeah,
And I think it's really interesting because Actually, first I'll tell you something funny. There was this meme, and it was like a tweet, and it said, what do men do when they don't cry? And the response was, we bottle it up until it explodes and we have a heart attack at 40 like a real man. I thought it was so funny. I was like, this totally happens, you know, it happens often.
That's the
but I just
idea of like these crises that hit the midlife crisis and like all of these things and like why people remember the show Snapped? That was a TV show. No? Oh my god. Okay, there was I don't know what channel it was on, but there literally was a show called Snapped, and it was about people who snapped and like went fucking apeshit and would like either kill someone or like commit crime. Like, but it was literally called Snapped, and it was like, okay, but like, why are people snapping, and why do we have a TV show about it?
What happens that often, you know?
Yeah.
Because I think people have it backwards. I think that we've been told, capitalism has told us that like, if you have a good job and if you have all your ducks in a row and all the, you know, all the stuff, then you can have love. Then you can feel good. You can feel good after you do all of the things, right? Whereas like, if you can, I want to say like train yourself, but it's mostly allow yourself to feel good.
Yeah.
All of these things will come, and they'll come better, stronger, and in brighter colors if you like, approach it from your feelings.
Yeah, so it's actually funny talking back, like this was like my ex and I like are like my like main ex are like huge kind of battle. And I've actually noticed it with other men that I've like been interested in. And I think it's really fascinating because there is this idea of like I need to get my stuff together and like I need to get before I can like enjoy you, you know? And I'm like, that doesn't resonate with me. Like that's so interesting. And so I'm wondering like if you and your romantic pursuits, have you found guys who are people who have like are on the same page with that, or have you also kind of experienced this like I need to get my shit together and then be with someone?
I feel like I just don't I feel like no, because with me, you just don't have a choice. I'm also like, I'm like super, I'm the balance of like where I'm pretty emotional, but I'm also like pretty direct. Like I'll tell you, I'll be like, listen, do you feel like this? Or do you want to cry? Cry, do it. No, but I feel like I've definitely dated people who are like restrictive of their feelings because they like try to be cool. But I'm always just in there with like let's have a conversation. Because the way that I see it, and I feel like I see this with people my age, and I'm like, people, we're 30, you know, like you don't have what's on the other side of vulnerability is going to be good no matter what. If you have a hard conversation with someone and it turns out that it's not what you expected, then you can learn from that and grow from that and move on. Because life is just the constant evolution. You have to be constantly growing because change is the only constant. So you're either changing for the better or for the worse. Like you don't have control over things changing. Things are changing just constantly. That's just the nature of life. But you do have control over if you're going to learn from something or not. Right. And I think so many people like avoid these hard conversations because they don't want the change.
Right.
But on the other side is growth, is emotional maturity, and that is always worth it, you know?
Yeah. You
just give yourself the ability to just love more next time. Right. Like maybe this isn't the one, but next time you have a greater capacity for deeper connection. Yeah. And that is what will bleed over into the other aspects of your life. You know, I think I've been thinking about this a lot because like I was so sort of deep in my feelings for such a long time in my 20s, where I think that like a lot of people, there's definitely like quite a few people who like didn't really have to deal with their emotions at that point. Because, you know, like go to college and like only focus on a career or what your major is or what you want to do, you know, and can really sort of take off really early on in those ways. But I've definitely really spent a long time really deciding like how to feel good and how to feel good in a way that like contributes positively to the world. And with like no band-aids, no sort of like loopholes or anything, like how to really authentically like feel good in a way that I can like raise the good in the collective consciousness. And I think it's taken me a really long time to get here, and it's valid because a lot of insane stuff went down when I was younger. But like now I'm at a place where like I'm considering another career shift, and it feels so right. Like it really feels like deeply in alignment, like with my inner child, with who I want to be in the future, with how I can sort of give back to the world. And it all ends up being like linked together, but like the denominator is love, right? How can I, now that I have love for myself, like how can I like help other people love themselves and just like love the world, you know? Because yeah, I just think fundamentally, I think that the structures make sense, and like money is cool, vacations are tight, all this stuff is cool. You know, we all want to be in Mykonos in August. Like I get it. But I feel like you want to feel good, like feel really good, to like where every day you can be like, my life rocks. Like if I die tomorrow, I feel like that. I genuinely do. I'm at a place where like if I died tomorrow, I'd be like, it was awesome. Thank you, you know?
I think it's really funny that you say that, because I like what you were describing is like someone like career, you know, school, knowing what they want to do, focusing on that, taking off, jumping right in. Like that was very much my path. Like, you know, graduated school early, graduated college early, like jumped into working. And then all of a sudden, you know, within my first year of working, I was like jet setting around the world, giving talks and writing articles and like all this like crazy shit, and like objectively crushing it. But then like subjectively no idea what the fuck was going on. And not, I still don't think I have developed what it means to feel good. Which I mean, it's funny that we talked earlier about like community moving home. Like I left New York. I was in New York for almost, you know, for 4.5 whatever years, and I left in November, and I didn't move home. And like that was like a really hard thing, you know. And I think like it's really fascinating because when all of those things that you thought were supposed to be what would do it for you, you know, like it's like I was the first to go to college in my family, the first to like have like a kind of a career, whatever, like that, like I did it, and then all of a sudden I was like, and you know, like there's been so many moments where I'm like, okay, and people are like, but look, and I'm like, and like it doesn't sit well or right, and there's like a lot of gaps and spaces, and like I think it's fascinating to hear your story, because I'm like, wow, like teach a master class, like because it's yeah.
There was probably times where like you were living the dream, but maybe didn't feel as fulfilling as it could have, you know? Yeah. And even in retrospect, you could be like, oh, that is so cool that I like, you know, I mean, you got thrown into it early on. I mean, going to college at 16 is absolute lunacy. Yeah. So like you were in it, you know, and there's probably times where you can look back on it and be like, I probably could have enjoyed some of these experiences more had I like had more time to fill up the space.
Totally. And it's actually really funny because so living in Nashville, so I went to college here. And I have 4 friends here that live here, who like either like left and came back or like stayed. And like 2 of them are married, purchased homes, that whole thing, whatever. And it's really interesting because like who I am today versus like who I was in college, you know, and like when they knew me, like they have acknowledged it, like you weren't present. Like it was like 4 years of like not in a bad way, but just it just, I was so fixated on like getting the best grades, being most involved. I was like student body president. I was like face of my college. Like I was just like doing all these things and like checking all the boxes that I thought were the like major key, to success or whatever. But like when I look back, I have like very like I didn't take trips with people. I didn't really have any like crazy. I took trips there by myself. Like I studied abroad. I like lived in India alone. Like I like did this like crazy shit, but it was like by myself. And hanging out with people since I've been here, I'm like I actually thanked one of my friends. I was like, thank you for like continuing to be my friend, even though like I felt like an asshole friend in college. And because like also I didn't know what community meant because I was an only child. So like people would be like, we're gonna go to a country concert, and I'd be like, I don't like country music. And so like I wouldn't go. But it's like you still go to like be with people, right? But I didn't really like grasp that. But I think like I look back and I'm like, wow, I worked really hard, and I'm not upset that I did that, but I think that like I didn't live. And now I think I did that. I started doing that a bit later, and so it looks a bit funnier and different that like, oh, like I'm like getting all my crazy out, or like I'm hanging out with my friends all the time and I'm like doing all this stuff, and it's like delayed as opposed to being like 18 and crazy. Um but no, I think like it's just actually something I used to like have a lot of conversations with like younger people, like whoever who wanted to like work where I worked, or like who, were still in college or whatever. And I always would be like, just like be with people. And like when you're trying to like network with people, connect with the person as a person, not because of their position, but just like take the trip, be with people, like go to the dinner, like community, like just like experience with the people, because like that's what's going to like sustain you through whatever, like the award, the plaque, the speaking gig, whatever. Like those things literally fall so flat so quickly. And it's wild because I don't think we talk about, like, I don't think it's like discussed, right? Like, even I've actually seen, on TikTok, right? Like there's been some folks that are like influencer adjacent, like they're maybe like a stylist or like a best friend, like they're not the famous person, but they're like in the orbit, and they're kind of like, it's not what it appears to be. Like it's lonely and it is like stressful, and like all these different things. And I'm like, I feel like I kind of try to do that with like, either like college life or like crypto, even crypto world. Like a lot of these people like want to be famous in Web3, and I'm like, it ain't it. It ain't it. Like build a solid community. Don't build a following. Like build a solid community, because like your following doesn't do anything. Like, the coolest people I know like actually are like, no one knows who they are, which I even hate saying that, but it's like they're not any, it's like they don't have the accolades, they don't have the Twitter following, they don't have they're not Google searchable. Like I used to literally like Google myself regularly to be like, how am I doing on Google? Like, and it's dumb. Like I think it's like, but and then I would Google other people and no one would come up. But it's like, yeah, because they're fucking normal people. Like most people don't have SEO. Like, but all of that, yeah, it all falls so flat. Like I'm so ready. It's so funny. I feel like I kind of like, not that I peaked, but I actually feel like I'm ready. Like my kind of big dream that I've been thinking about, and I want to hear yours too. Like I want just like a series of like properties that are like bed and breakfast slash studio space slash like gallery slash like, restaurant. And I just want little ones where I can like have all my artist friends make art and all my chef friends cook, and like I can do the ops and whatever, but like just literally I want to just like cultivate space for community for like all my friends. And that's like it. Like I don't want to like, I don't want to do anything else. Like I want to do my own research just for fun. Like I want to read books for fun. I want to study for fun. I want to write analytical essays, but for fun. Like I don't like, not like work just does not interest me. Career does not interest me anymore. And I'm like,
right?
damn.
It's one of the things that like that was such a priority for such a long time, when now you're sort of realizing that like your sort of sweet, delicious dream is like to gather people and to gather community. Whereas like there was so much time, like years of your life, where
decades.
you're actively walking away from that, someone invites you to a concert, you're like, no. Where it's like deep down, there's part of you that wanted the opposite of that almost,
Oh yeah, but it didn't feel like what was, important, right? Like, which was all externally, it kind of goes back to like the inner child thing as well that like you were talking about. I'm like, inner child me was just like reading books and would like go hang out in like the forest by the creek. And that's what I want to do now.
Right? Or like, I feel like your inner child doesn't even necessarily need to be like what you were physically doing, but like who you were when anything was possible, you know?
Yeah.
And it makes sense that like that you want to gather people, and there's definitely a lot of like we've just been living, we're coming out of like 100 years of just like really masculine energy, you know, which I think a lot of us are realizing is like not the jam. You need the balance, you know? I think that for a long time we've been sort of putting emotions to the side, putting, you know, community, connection, love, like as this superficious, like extra thing. You can get that after you win the lottery. Then you can be in love and like stuff like that. You know, if you're super lucky, you can have a great community of people that you love, but you will have a job. Where now that sort of you're in a place where you're like, oh, I love to gather people, and you can be gathering people, don't you feel like the rest of life got a lot easier and like got a lot better? You know?
It's insane. Like yeah, absolutely. And I recognize that, like, you know, the privilege and, you know, I think there's a lot, it's funny, I think a lot of something I battle with is like working really hard and like following the path of success, which I'm sure like, you know, first generation, like, you know, children of immigrants and things like that. And like, I'm not that, but I'm like college and career wise that. And I think like there is this idea of like continuing to work really hard and almost like you owe this kind of like, not slavery, but like you struggle, like it's kind of like required, you know, and it's like that to be like, oh, I just want to like have a bed and breakfast with my friends and I just want to travel. It feels very like gluttonous, which it's not. Mm-hmm. It's not. It's actually very rudimentary. Like it's literally hunter-gatherer shit.
Totally. It's not at all. Just deep down, we've been conditioned to thinking like you have to push paper in a cubicle, and if you're not, you're being extra, and that's just all trash, you know? Yeah. It's just so deeply ingrained like in society, and like especially in America. Like it was wild living in London and like being in Europe and seeing that like you worked because you had to. Like work wasn't life. Like there was life, and then there was work was a part of it. Whereas in America, all anyone talks about is work. It's the first thing someone will ask you is, what do you do? Yeah. And no one was like that, like in Europe. And I found that really fascinating because I don't think it has to be like that. And then, you know, that's what's also really cool about this sort of modern age of entrepreneurs, where more and more people are being like, I'm going to make money doing something I appreciate, you know, and maybe it'll be 80% of the money that I could be making if I went to work for the man, but that's worth it, you know? And it really is. And a lot of the times it's not mutually exclusive. If you go in the paint on something that you care about, you're probably going to make a ton of money. Yeah. Because the energy is there, you know, the connection is there, and people want that and will spend money on it, you know?
Yeah. Wow. Okay. So we're getting near the end. So I was going to cap it 2 hours, so we can continue. But I want to hear what like a big dream. So you mentioned your farm, but you also mentioned a career shift. And I'm curious.
So I've been thinking a lot recently. I've been working in art galleries and like working with artists for a long time, for like the past few years. And then last fall, I went to do a job at Urbit because I was like, oh, I love Web3. Let's work in Web3. And Urbit was really, really cool. But the project that I was working on it got shut down. So in the past like couple months, I've been thinking like, just like really trying to think about what I want to do and like stop just saying yes to things just because I like need to fill this hole, you know, because I feel like guilty, like, oh, I'm not working. I got to get a job. I got to get a job tomorrow. Like, let's just say yes and get a job, and then we'll figure out what I really want. But I really just gave myself the time to just really think about it. And I've just been like meditating a lot and journaling a lot on it, and like still applying to like different art gallery jobs and different Web3 jobs, and like really seeing like what I feel would be a good fit, not just doing something just to do it, but what would truly be a good fit. Um, and something that just like came to me, and I was like, oh, this is it. This is it. Um, I'm It's funny that I was like not going to tell anyone about this. Now I'm telling you on a podcast. But
I'm just putting it all out there. Like my whole thing, I've told like a handful of people, but I just gotta said it too. So we're just putting it all out there.
Exactly. That's how it works, you know. And I'm realizing that I love working with artists because I'm like really passionate about encouraging people to be expressive. But I am getting a little bit sort of I'm losing interest in this like very shiny, very posh art world where everyone is very fabulous and it's all really expensive and all that. And I definitely feel like I work well in those communities and I'm like inclined to those communities, but I want to get back into I want to go back and get another master's in psychology. I want to be a therapist. I want to specialize in young people, like teenagers. I want to specialize in grief. I've always really wanted to work with like incarcerated people and homeless people. I have a great affinity for people who are sort of like on the fringe of society and also who like really struggle with like shadowy stuff and death and things that are really taboo. I feel like for me, nothing is taboo. Like just right out the gate, you know, I got like, yeah, all sorts of, especially when I was younger, before my parents got divorced, but it was just all sorts of really sort of like dark scenarios. And then having that sort of end with my dad passing away and like having it really be like death, like the ultimate sort of darkness. And it's just sort of really showed me that this is like a part of life. It's not, you know, the last 10% of your life, it's going to be all the dark stuff, you know, like it's like the ebb and flow. Like we have hard days every day, you know, people get overwhelmed with sadness and with grief and with jealousy and feeling out of control and addictions and feeling powerless. Like this is almost 50% of our life. You know, the yin and yang, baby.
I think more, honestly, because it consumes you. Like, if you don't deal with your shit, it eats your life. So it's like, it eats all the good, you know?
And it starts to eat the good of the people around you.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I had to have a hard conversation with one of my best friends a couple years ago where I told her, I was like, you have to stop this because you're becoming intolerable to be around. And we really need to figure out, like, I'm here for you, like we can do this together, but like we have to figure out how to change this because it's going to start, not only has it totally eaten you, but it's starting to sort of spread to the people that you love. And I had just spoken with her a couple weeks ago and she was like, I think about that conversation all the time and it totally saved me because I needed to really hear that from somewhere else. And also just like being able to accept these things, you know, like it's the majority of our life that we feel these hard feelings, but how many times do we talk about it? Like how often do you get to talk about it? If you're very lucky, you have some solid friends. But like, wouldn't it be cool if we can get into like a group situation and be like, this shit happened. And then again, you're back to like the tribe, you know, you all of a sudden have 5 or 6 or 7 different like inputs of perspective and resources and whatnot. And I just feel like we could be enjoying life so much more if we dug a little bit deeper into these things and did it like in a community where you realize you're not alone, you feel safe and supported. And I just, you know, I don't know what it is, but I feel such an affinity for like homeless people because I see these people and I think, damn, what happened to your community? You know, like what happened to like maybe they don't have parents or something, but like, what happened to like your brothers and sisters? Like, what happened to your cousins? What happened to the people you went to school with? Like, where did that community go where you ended up just so alone?
Yeah.
I feel like that's the real, like, foundation of a lot of the homeless people that I see is, they're talking to themselves because they're so alone.
Yeah. Well, even like, sorry, I'm trying to figure out, it got so dark. Like maybe I'll put that. Oh no, it's not really moving. Oh, fine. I don't know what's happening. No, that's worse.
Oh, that's good.
Hey, light innovation. We're reflecting it onto the wall. I think that is, so I feel similarly passionate about, well, this actually is just part of my crippling empath thing, but really strongly about like substance abuse issues and like opioid addiction and like, kind of like that part of really, like, what is it? It's like Death of Despair. Like that, there was a documentary that like deemed it that. And I like think about that a lot because it's like, that is loneliness. Like that is isolation. Like those things when things become too miserable for you to handle, and like the tie between substance abuse and homelessness is like very severe, right? Like the ties between mental illness and substance abuse and homelessness and incarceration, like there are plenty of people who have mental illness who have a strong community and who are not on the streets or who are, able to get treatment or who feel loved and safe, right? And like there are opportunities, or who are able to get the support before they are imprisoned, right? And like I think there's like some fiscal resource elements, right? And there's like some socioeconomic elements, but then there also is a part of it that is just like, yeah, community. And like, but it's interesting because it's like when I think of community, right? Like I'm like, oh, think of like there used to be all these like blockchain like diagrams, but it's like, in these like networks, right? Like they're all connected, like little spider web, but like if the community you're born into cannot support you for whatever reason, like they're working all the time, they're trying to put food on the table, or they're emotionally unavailable and traumatized because they didn't have community. So then it's like, okay, then you have to go elsewhere, right? And like you find them at school, or you find them online, or you find them at work, or whatever. Like our well-being is so closely tied with the well-being of like those around us. And I actually think the more broken down those things get, the more isolated we become, right? Like it's like the offshoots of like, yeah, it's the butterfly. It's a ripple effect. It's the butterfly effect. It's whatever. But I think there's a lot, caring for your community, like strengthens, like it's like weakest link, right? Like it's the more you care for your community and the more that like other people have their needs met. And I think that's like, at least for me, I think a lot in terms of like I'm a giver. I give a lot. I'm always giving. But it's like because I just think that like if I have the capacity and bandwidth to give a lot, to allow others to kind of like get to a point where they can also give, like just like you think people have a natural inclination to like want to be needed, I think like the other side of that equation is like you want to be needed, therefore you can give something, right? But like you have to, like, not everyone's in the place to give something, whatever that giving is. And so it's like, what can we do to like get people to where they can like give their talents and give their time and energy and like give these other things and like that. And it's reciprocal, right? That's the beauty of like community, right? Like you are in a shit place, people give to you. They get in a shit place, you give to them. Like you give your, again, you give your time, you give your money, you give your connections, you give your resources, like, and then the idea is that it will come back to you. And it's not a one-to-one, reciprocal relationship, which I also had to learn. Like everyone gives in different ways and everyone also needs in different ways. But yeah, I think that is very cool. I think you'd be a kick fucking ass therapist. I think you'd be such a fun therapist. I would sign up.
Thanks. I also think I am totally with you. Like it's about empowering people to give, and it's about helping people realize like you don't need much to give. I think that there's a lot of, and I think that this comes from like maybe the total personal opinion actually, but I think this comes from sort of like churches and the institutions of churches where churches are like, oh, you have to be a totally pure and godly person to help anyone else. Because if you're totally pure and godly, you need to go repent. Like, you have to be perfect or else you can't help anyone else. And so that's why everyone tries to be perfect, because they want to be needed. Whereas, like, fuck all that. If you have 2 apples, you have an apple to give. You know what I mean? Like, you don't need much. And I think this is really important. I think that people get really hung up on not wanting to volunteer or not wanting to donate or things like this because they don't feel adequate or they don't feel like they have enough to give. Whereas I think it's important to just find whatever way like suits you. Like, for example, I do this volunteer program and I've been doing it since quarantine, and it's I cook meals for kids for lunch. So it was like when quarantine happened and public schools closed, you know, there's a lot of people who like depend on that school lunch.
Yeah.
A lot of people who get it for free and like that's their lunch. So this program started where people could volunteer and donate lunches, and they would go to the Covenant House, which is it's a center for homeless children. And I was like, this is amazing. Like, I love to cook. Like, this is literally no sweat off my back. Like, it's fun for me. It takes me like a couple hours, and I make 15 school lunches every 2 weeks. Someone comes and picks them up and just distributes them. Like, I literally only have to do something that I love doing anyways.
Yeah.
And like, you can find things that totally vibe your exact wavelength and like be giving, you know? You don't have to like have $1 million or have a super special skill. You just have to find the community that needs what you got.
Totally. I mean, I saw that during COVID. It's funny, Maggie and I actually, when COVID like first hit New York, we were like, we started like populating this like Excel sheet of all the different like mutual aid activities that were going on around us, right? It was a lot of like taking food to elderly people, you know, like buying supplies, like a lot of things that there were some fiscal elements, but a lot of it was like, or do you have a bike? Do you have a car? Can you deliver? Can you, you know, go escort someone somewhere? Can you, like, all these different things? And like, it was really, that was a very cool moment to watch. It was kind of the first time that I was introduced to like the mutual aid concept. And then, you know, I actually saw a similar thing pop up with Ukraine in like a really fucking wild way, where like I did a kind of similar effort of like, you know, gathering links and resources and like populating them in like one place and then like sharing that out, so people like when they ask questions like where can I turn to, it's like you have, you know, kind of this like directory. And it is so cool in times of crisis actually like how our default is to show up for one another. And I think that is like, you know, when I get very like upset about humanity, I'm like, oh, actually I think the default is good, right? Like, it is like being in these groups and, you know, seeing people that are like, I have a couch, or like I have an air mattress, or like I can, you know, pausing their life to like show up for other people, whatever that, you know, looks like. That I just wish, my wish is that like people wouldn't wait like until there is a crisis. It's like there are things you can do in your day to day that are, again, you don't have to be perfect, like you're not inadequate to do it. And I think like it's I wish it wasn't. And this is actually one of the things I think about with like social impact and these concepts of like nonprofits, well, especially social impact, because everyone's like blockchain for social impact, and it's like, or just like for good, like not even for good, just it is, right? Like we should ultimately be working to like better things, right? To like improve, you know, everyone's situation, right? It's not like, it shouldn't be this like thing relegated to like a corner and like a 10% of your time. It's like in your day to day, like what skills and talents and gifts do you have that like you can give back in your community, you know? And also like, I think another thing too is like, people feeling like they don't, because I felt this like, well, I haven't shown up in my community. Like I used to be like very civically engaged and was like, you know, very loud about that in college and stuff. And then like I moved to New York and like, I don't know who my like council member is. Like, I don't know like where things are. And so then I was like, oh, then I shouldn't contribute. And it's like, no, that's actually the opposite. like I should figure out how to like what can I contribute to my community? Like how can I meet my neighbor or like get to know someone or like even just my landlord or like it's they don't have to also be these big coordinated efforts either. Like it can just be a school down the street from you or again like homelessness is a fucking wild topic. That's a whole wow.
Oh, I do wish though, because it was so prominent in like high school and college, and when you're, all the extracurriculars, like you played a sport, you had some extracurricular, and you volunteered. Like volunteering was like, if you're going to college, you're volunteering.
Yeah.
And I'm just bummed that we like, I don't know where that like requirement fell off, but like I wish that we as adults were like, okay, like 2 hours a week or 2 hours every 2 weeks. I'm gonna volunteer here, and it's gonna just be like this, civic duty. I wish like we could bring that back in a way that's not like demanding.
Yeah.
And I live in this like fantasy where I wish I got to choose, like, I wish I got to choose that my taxes went to like a certain thing that I felt passionate about, I wish I got to be like, I want my tax money to go to foster care or something like this. Yeah. And then I could feel more engaged. You know what I mean? Like, because we pay taxes supposedly for the civic good of everybody, but we don't know what they're doing at all. And they're just making claims that they're helping things where it's like, how about you don't tax me? And instead of that, it's like, I'm required to go donate to whatever government run thing that I feel passionate about,
Totally.
Like that would be sick.
Yeah, that would be great. No.
I'm also really trying to plan a Mochi Habitat for Humanity.
Oh yeah.
Like we should go to Tijuana and like build a house. I did that in high school and it was sick.
Yeah.
We like built a house like in a slum, just like went to this house, like demolished it and like hand made cement and like built a house. Because I feel like that's also what's great about community is you can do so much in numbers, right?
Yeah.
Like when I cook the meals, it's something that I can do by myself and that's great. But when you get groups of people together, you can move mountains,
Totally. I mean, I think it would be, as we have these like Mochi hubs forming, like, how fucking cool would it be if like everyone bought, like get everyone together in LA and y'all cook, or like get everyone together in LA. Like, I mean, there's so many organizations for homeless people in LA. One of my good friends, Sarah, actually used to work for one. There's one that I can send you, that I follow, on Instagram. It's like, I think it's called Beauty to the Streets, and they go and they do like, they give like free haircuts and like provide clean clothes and like kind of this like restoring dignity situation that is like phenomenal. But no, I think it would be cool, like, if we, I think that, like, I think one of the things that I've noticed in organizing people is that, like, people do get paralyzed by not knowing where to go and where to look and, like, how to get started. And so just, like, having someone who can, like, catalyze, who, like, has something that they're already passionate about and working on and then can just kind of, like, bring folks in, is really great. But also, like, I'm a big fan of, like, I don't know, I was a very religious child, and did all of the mission trips and like evangelizing and all of that. So I'm like, and we did a lot of the like, go build a house, dig a water well kind of thing. And I'm like pretty critical of that, like as a concept, because I think there's like more intentional and sustainable ways of impacting communities. But that's not an excuse to say that you shouldn't do anything. It's like, they're just are healthier, better researched ways to like, have things be like people led, like I think, and also I just don't want to, it's like caring for a community shouldn't, I don't know. My dream is that it wouldn't be an activity. It would just be kind of like a reflex, right? Like there's I don't know if LA has this, but in New York there's community fridges. Are you familiar? And I think that's like so cool because like I've dropped things in a community fridge, like when I'm like cleaning my fridge out, it's like, or if like I go to the store, I just buy like 2 of everything. Or like I've seen people, one of my friends, actually the same friend who used to work with the homeless people in LA, not the homeless people, that was a weird way of saying that, the homeless, the unhoused, I think is the new word actually. But she would carry in her purse in New York like a baggie that would have like hand sanitizer, like Kleenex, like granola bar, whatever, and would like just have it in her bag. And if she saw someone on the train, she would like ask them if they wanted something and would like give it to them, and like it was kind of this like again like reflex thing that like every time like I get approached, like I always buy food, I always listen, I always have conversations. Like I think I have like something about my face is just people come to me a lot. I think they just know that like or my aura. I don't know.
They can read your energy. It happens to me too. Like I feel like it's kind of a reflex for me. I think that like if I have $1 and there's someone asking for it upstairs, and like whenever I have like leftover food and I walk past homeless people, I'm always like, do you want this? And there's totally some nice people who are like, no, give me cash, fuck off. And I'm like, okay, fine. But most people are stoked.
Yeah.
But it's true. But I think that maybe activities is what bridges the gap from nothing to it being a reflex.
Totally. It's humanization, right? Like it's like putting people in front of people, whether it's, unhoused people, whether it's refugees, whether it's incarcerated people. It's like the thing and I think it's one of the reasons like I love people and I love bringing people together and I love building kind of community and like bringing different folks from different facets of life together because like we're the fucking same. And it's like you sit down with someone, you learn their story. Like you sit down with an unhoused person and you learn that they were once a professor who owned a house and you're like, wait, what? And then it's like, or you sit down with an incarcerated person and you're like, oh shit, like we listen to the same band, or like, and then all of a sudden these people are with, like someone who has a substance abuse issue, like they're this literal same, and it's just a twist of fucking fate that it is not you. And it's like the only way that we're ever like empathy is not going to travel through a screen. Empathy is not going to like be, it cannot be. I don't know if it can be taught. I think it has to be like felt. I think it can be encouraged, but I don't think you can actually teach it. And the more I'm thinking about it, I think it's something that like you have to experience, and it can be encouraged, but like you just being up close, which I think COVID was hard, right? We couldn't be near people, but like if we can get back, like being with people, and seeing it and sharing stories, getting deeper, like you were talking about, right? Like maintaining friendships and dialogues with folks. It's like, then you have like a vested interest, right? Like then, you have a homie and you're like, wait, like then a policy decision comes up, or then, some kind of whatever comes up and you're like, actually, no, that's fucked up. Like my friend Jerry. And you're like, yeah, wait, I'm doing this for Sue, or like whatever.
Well, because then you have connection, and then you have love, and then you can get down to letting people. Then you get back down to like the fabric of fucking life is just pure potential, and circumstances are wild, and people can be born into wild circumstances that they may not have the capacity to steer themselves out of. But you're absolutely right. I've been thinking about this a lot, that like we're all made of the same stuff. We really are. And it really is sort of the power of your mind to decide to what extent you want to change your circumstances or not. And then like that can get tricky because there's mental health, there's brain chemistry and things like that. But a lot of it, I think, can be reached with connection and with love. And, I've had great conversations with totally crazy people on the street, and that like have made me feel better, and it's always like worth it, and we're all in this together. I think that that's what the community philosophy will eventually hopefully bleed into. And I think climate change has also been a really interesting sort of deus ex machina aspect, like came out of nowhere and put us all in the same boat, like not in the specifics, but we're all affected by it. It doesn't matter, where you live or how much money you have. Like, things are changing, and if we want to save the planet, we all have to do it together. And yeah, and I think we can lift everyone up, and it'd be better for all of us. I think we're all tired of seeing like the same people, Nancy Pelosi, just like getting super rich off of us and like not doing anything with it. It's getting tired, where it's like I would rather see more people succeed just in micro ways than just seeing the top people just get bigger. I don't think it's doing good for anyone. I don't think it's doing good economically, socially, or anything. I think it's funny because 2022 is the age of Aquarius. We're like fully moving into this like universal cycle of empathy and of more feminine energy and of wanting to nurture people. And it's just crazy how much it parallels the outside reality, right? Like it's insane out there. It's the apocalypse. Like,
oh yeah.
Like, what are you cool? You're gonna die with millions of dollars in a bunker? Like, that's not cool, Like,
dude,
it's really gonna be so fun for you? Like, probably not. It would probably be more fun to like make sure that everyone can, rise up a little bit in whatever way that looks, together. And it does good for the energy of everyone. I think also COVID really showed us like how powerful the collective energy is, right? Like if everyone is suffering, like it sucks. Even if you could, fly your jet and go somewhere, like you'd feel like a jerk and you probably wouldn't want to do that, Totally. I think there's a lot of room for debilitating empathy in this world. I think that like that's the real gold. That's the real bit.
I mean, it's what I work towards, and sometimes I get, if anyone follows me on Cough Instagram, you've definitely seen when I get on these tears, and sometimes I feel bad about it, and I feel like I have a very weird relationship with social media. But I mean, people always talk about use your platform, and like there's moments where I'm like, man, I am going to literally scream into the fucking void in hopes that like one of the 150 things I post and scream about like will stick. And I think like it's like what I was saying earlier, like I think there is potential. Like I truly think this idea of numbing or being disconnected, I think it's like it is so pre-programmed, but I think it can be melted, it can be undone. There just has to be, I think people have to pave the path and like, be the trailblazer and like model. And I think I've done that with so many things in my life that like, it just naturally happened. And then all of a sudden I kind of recognized, I was like, fuck, this is kind of, I think, what I do. And like, I think empathy that turns to action is like what I hope to be putting out. And sometimes empathy turns into freezing and turns into like collapsing. But like, hello, hi, okay, are you? She agrees, she concurs. But I think like that, that's kind of I just want to give people, I hope that anyone that I engage with never says like, I don't know what to do. I'm like, I do if there's one thing I do, I hope it's that I provide you with opportunities to engage, like that's kind of and it's to the point though where sometimes I have to like catch myself and I'm like, the world does not depend on me. And like my Instagram stories or like my, conversation topics, like it, if I don't share, if I don't engage, if I need to delete the app, like it will be okay. And I'm not a bad person for not amplifying others, like it's almost just like, I have to like decenter myself, like it's not about like, I am not going to solve anything. Rome's not built in a day and it cannot collapse. I mean, it can collapse in a day, but yeah, I think.
But it's about your community. It's not about the whole world, right? It's about your community. And if you're reaching your community, there's like an Eminem quote where he's like, if I reach one person it's worth it all,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And
It's so
like, that's
cool.
very extreme. I hope I'm reaching more than one person when I do anything. But at the same time, you know, that's enough, right?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree. I agree. Wow. I love how we just like took it up such a notch in the second half. In the second half, we came in hot. Like, I think it's so good.
Yeah, this is fun because now I feel inspired too. We're gonna make a Mochi sort of. We got to think of a pun for like a Mochi philanthropy channel.
Well, we have an activism channel, but it is mainly just update. Like, it's more. There used to be. So Wei Li actually is probably, I would say Wei Li, shout out to you, is probably the person I see it like most. He does like the really radical. Like, he was out like camping with like water protectors and like on the front lines, and I'm like, that's the real shit. And so I remember like last year and maybe the year before when he was doing a lot of that work, he was sharing a lot of like direct action people could take, and like, you can come to this and you can come to this. Thing was really great, and then it kind of died, and then it was like, which like the hard thing is like, I definitely feel that in Mochi where it's like the balance of like posting really hard shit because it's like you should be aware, but then also pairing it with like what can you do about it. And I think the working on like what can you do about it versus just like the world is terrible, because most people don't like that. So you have to kind of like figure out how to like message it. But I bet I actually would love one day to do. So there's this like activity that I've done previously in like different communities where like you basically do like a list of like, it's like a double-sided marketplace where like you list what you can give, but then you also list what you need. And it's like you can do this kind of like matching exercise. I think it'd be really cool to do that in Mochi. Because I'm sure that like there's people who are like doing things already. Because like I think a lot of Mochis are just really fucking good humans and like that don't talk about it. That I'm sure that like either like sharing what they already do or sharing what they could do, or like I think that could be really. We used to do Mochi care packages like way back in the day.
Cute.
Yeah, that was like just like, you know, Gabe and Myra sending snacks and cards that were really sweet, kind of thinking of you. And I want to bring it back, but I actually think it could be done differently. I think it could be done in a way that is more like how can this community show up for you, and also like what can you give this community that isn't just checking in or crypto related. Because ultimately, if that all burns, we still have Mochi, right? Like, if you know, blockchain dies or something, we still have each other.
Absolutely.
You know, fake money, real friends. Fake money, real friends.
Mochi has been such a monumental addition to my life. Like, I would get a Mochi face tat.
We talked about that in Denver. We were like, so are we not face tats, but just like tats? It didn't happen.
What about tats? Me and Kim were talking about it. I was like, I have one tattoo that I literally got at a house party when I was 18. I'm not like a tattoo person. I would get a Mochi tattoo. Like, Mochi has radically changed my life for the better. I am endlessly grateful for this community. Like, endlessly grateful for this community. And shout out to Gabe, because like he made magic, you know? Like, the Mochi community is out of control, exceptional, and I'm happy to see it like grow and let that magic be an inspiration to other people. But yeah, we have a really good thing going, and there's so much we could do, you know? There's so much even more that we could do for our community and beyond. It's a really, really beautiful thing.
What a way to end. That was perfect. Woo! Cut. That was great. Okay, thanks everyone for listening. Hold on, I'm going to stop the recording.